So we're gonna talk a little bit about like figuring out where to paddle, when to paddle, and then particularly talking about in what are the conditions we're gonna expect and how do we find that information and how to paddle or how to navigate that area in a hopefully safe as possible manner. Where? Well, there are several guidebooks and online resources available, so let's quickly look at a few. Actually, this slideshow I made, which has all the links in it. Where's chat? You can follow that live. I'll put the link in. And that way the links are also available. So guidebooks. One of them almost needs no introduction. It is Canoe and Kayak Routes of Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington of our own Philip Jones. It's a mountaineer book. And it just has a bunch of fun paddles in it in our area. And I think if you're into paddling, and it's really a must-have, and it's written by a member of the club, so that's a double win. Paddling the Columbia, a guide to all 12,000 miles, 1,200 miles of our scenic and historical river by John Ross Kelly. He's an author and mountaineer. I don't know too much about it. I know I have the book on my Kindle. I can't remember actually reading it, but so. Then there's online resources. The two main ones that I kind of use are the Willamette River Water Trail map, which is this one. And I don't know if everybody is familiar with this, but it's a map. You can select boat ramps and it'll show you where all our boat ramps. You can go up and down. Click on one. Cathedral Park. We know it well. And you can open it in another window or just click on it to get more information and some pictures. Then another that's kind of my favorite because I find myself paddling more on the Columbia than on the Willamette. Not that I have anything added, it just tends to be easier for me to get to being in Northeast Portland. And 84 is easy, it's close to me, and 30. So the Lower Columbia River Water Trail. They used to have actually NOAA charts on there, but sadly that's not available anymore. But yeah, if you click on the 4 squares, oh, that's the base map gallery. Here we go, the map layers. You can select different things if you want to see it or not. Like if you're going to do a day paddle, you're probably less interested in campsites. I'm not going to deal with food right now or lodging, not paddle shops. And that'll be okay. Let's say, let's just try finding a place. Let's go to Booster. State Park in Corbett. A lot of us know this area. A lot of us have paddled here. Obviously, it's a boat ramp that a lot of us have launched from. There's actually another one. Well, it's not an official boat ramp, but there's another good spot right about here that you can also launch. There's a gravel trail down to the river. And one of my favorite paddles in the area is just launch here, go out to Cape Horn, sometimes up to Foca Rock here. It's a fun place to play. But yeah, if you go back, zoom out to the fill thing, you see that there is so many options to launch your boat and go for a paddle. So you can spend hours on this website. And the link is right here. And I'm sure it's also on our Oops links page. Not 100% sure, but I almost assume so. So we've thought about where we were gonna paddle. Let's do the Rooster Rock to Cape Horn paddle, just to keep in mind. So we're talking about conditions. General weather, there's a lot of options there. I mostly tend to go to weather.gov, which is like the National Weather Service website. Why is this not? Hold on a sec. There we go. Things get a little bit covered up by the Zoom. And they actually were having some problems earlier today. But let's go to so let's see. Tomorrow, say we want to go tomorrow. Showers likely mainly after 11 a.m. Otherwise, cloudy, if high near 54. Calm winds becoming west around 5 miles per hour. New precipitation amount less than 10 of an inch possible. So up to around 5 mile per hour winds. I don't think that's a concern for most of us. Depending on the time of year, you know, in summer afternoons, there can be 20, 30 knot winds going against the current and making for some nice 4-foot wind waves. That can be fun to play in if that's what you want to do, and it can be a little bit too much for other people. We can talk more about how to discern that. For now, say we want to look at the weekend and have a bit more fine-grained information, then I like to look at the hourly weather forecast, which is this little graph here. And let's go up forward 2 more days. That brings us Saturday and Sunday. And what are we looking at? So Saturday morning, 9 a.m., we're talking about it's mile per hour winds, and dropping back 6 a.m., dropping back to 7, then 8, 9 throughout the days. So that's a little bit more windy. That almost goes into what we would consider level 3 conditions. So you might consider, like, is that what I want to do? Looks like the wind is also coming from the west, so there might be some waves. So at that point, you know, it's not going to be a easy paddle. You kind of have to figure out for yourself what are conditions you're comfortable with. I would say, hey, this looks like fun, I'll go do it, but it might not be your own. Other resource that I would quickly like, if we go to our own website. And look at the trip rating systems. So less than 8 mile per hour is level 1. So it would be a level 2 trip. So really not too bad, but it kind of depends. Let's look further. Of course, if anybody has any questions, and I see there's some things in chat. Yep.
So Jasper, if they don't have if the National Weather Service doesn't have that specific place, like, Rooster Rock State Park, maybe show them how you can change
Yes.
where you're getting your forecast from by just moving in that other window.
Yes, so there is a little map here, and you can scroll the map wherever you want. And oh my goodness, there's Tillamook Bay. And say I want to know what the weather is like offshore, and specifically marine weather. I can click anywhere I want to. Click. Oh. And there we go. 12 nautical miles north-northwest of Cape Lookout. Tonight, variable winds less than 5 knots, becoming west-southwest 5 to 9 knots in the afternoon. Showers likely mainly after 11 a.m. Westfall 5 foot at 9 seconds. That's kind of nice, actually. But yeah, if you go into this map, you can scroll around to any location, at least in the continental US, and just randomly click a point, and it will bring up the weather forecast for that area.
Jasper, do you find that like the wind and things that are being represented on here are accurate for lake conditions, not just river or ocean conditions?
Up to a point. So the forecast models work magnificently well on the ocean. They have some understanding of the general geography of the land, but like, for instance, Cape Horn, where we were just looking, it's not uncommon to have at some points there to have the actual wind be twice what they forecast, because it's a cape, and winds always kind of get whipped around capes, and that kind of microclimate information they don't really have. The nice thing is, once you know that, and once you get to know an area, you kind of start knowing that. You kind of know, like, okay, this is windy, I back up 100 feet and the wind will go down again. It's kind of, so, but it's, yeah. It's reasonable accuracy, but it's still a weather forecast. So, there's no guarantees there.
Yeah. And it seems like, I'm not sure what everyone's paddling experience is on here. I know that the Columbia is not always a comfortable place for me with my paddle skills. And so I guess I just want to put that out there too, is for folks to be sure that if it's your first time, you might want to go with an experienced buddy, even if you're looking at all of these things.
But that's a little bit, look at that, look at the conditions, because there are plenty of days that the Columbia is really very friendly, especially if you don't go all the way in the gorge or not all the way in coastal areas, but that section of the middle Columbia doesn't have to be that scary. But look at the forecast, and if the winds are predicted less than 5 knots and you're not getting too close, and especially if you choose to paddle somewhere, like if we are looking back at where we were, Rooster Rock State Park, you can launch here. If the conditions look too bad, don't cross over. Just go around St. Island. There's a lot of other options, and there's I go look, for instance, at Washington.
Jasper, there's a question on what tools you use for swell predictions.
I mostly just stick with the NOAA conditions forecasts. Tourist to surf conditions, they are more accurate for specific surf beaches, but that's not always where I want to play. So I will look at it sometimes, but mostly I just look at what is the swell just on NOAA on the same website that I just showed. And with experience, you just get a feeling of like, oh, if the swell comes from that direction at that size at that period, it's gonna look something like this. And you know, it's not something you want to rush into. Just start on very small days and slowly build your experience up. Paddle with people who know the area. You know, Craig is asking a lot. Like, there aren't a lot of oops paddles that actually go onto the ocean. There are groups of people who do, and you can certainly get in contact with those. And if you know, email me, and we can talk more about that. I don't think we have to do that right now in the meeting because it might not be quite as interesting for everybody. But I might be wrong. Speak up if you want to hear more about that.
Well, I guess it does bring up a point, Jasper, that we have like the oops paddles that trip organizers post and people can sign up for, right? But if somebody wants to paddle with other people, you know, in our Facebook group, people could say, hey, I'm wanting to go someplace. Or if somebody isn't a TO, a trip organizer, and they'd like to have a paddle on the Columbia or in Tillamook Bay or something like that, can you talk a little bit about how people could request to have that happen?
Yeah, that's simple. Just email the TO list. And the TO list is, let's see, because Steve isn't here. Do you know the name of the list by heart?
Not off the top of my head, and I'm afraid to move my screen off of you to search for it because I think that'll mess up the
Jasper, it's under the activity, wherever you were just getting the activities, it's one of the lists.
Okay.
All right, okay.
So, yeah, so there it is. Wait, hold on. Organizer and instructors.
Exactly. So essentially, there's another question. How do you find people that go on the ocean? Email me. We can talk. I can put you in contact with other people. Not gonna do that in an official oops club, because there's a lot of things we do on the ocean that we can't really do easily under the oops policies. Our security and insurance regulations are a little bit too stringent for that. And you know, the ocean, it's oftentimes a matter of a day planning, like let's go tomorrow, conditions look good, let's go, instead of, you know, going through this whole process. And but yeah, if anybody wants to talk about that.
But we do have some organized trips, like we
Yep.
have the Orcas Island trip. I don't know if people consider that ocean, but we will be out, not in a river. But if someone's looking to like get a sense of being out more in the ocean, it's, you know, for me feels different than a river or a lake. And then we have other trips that are along the coast, but not out into the ocean itself.
Sometimes, I mean, sometimes we go out of Cascade Head to the caves there.
Right, so like our Lincoln City trip, you're gonna lead
Exactly.
some trips
Yeah.
out to Cascade Head, right?
Yep.
There we
That's
go.
fun. So can come there.
And we do a
we were-
South Coast trip.
Yeah, we were talking about doing one this weekend, actually to Cascade Head, but I got sick and apparently I'm not. I'm supposed to stay away from people for a few days after that, so that's not going to work this time. But there will be some, but it's, you know, not a lot. Let's see, let's go. Any other question? Yep, there. Morton, you were jumping ahead. Because if you look next, tides and currents, NOAA tide predictions is always a good one to know. Not going to spend too much time around that. We're still looking mostly at the Willamette and the Columbia. On the Willamette, tides are almost not a concern anyway. Where's the Columbia? Okay, there we go. But yeah, there's several points here. Well, Portland Morrison Street Bridge, that's obviously the Willamette, but
Jasper, will you show us Sabi Island? That's one where in the books it always has threatening messages about getting stranded out there because of those do have some tidal influence. Where's the best place to find
the island? I usually usually look at St. Helens. Astoria, Covered, Warrenton, Astoria. This is, by the way, an Alder Cape Horn, but St. Helens is usually a good point there. It's reasonably close. When you're paddling in tidal areas that dry up, the simple trick that I usually go by is paddle on the incoming tide. So you start your paddle fairly low, and if you paddle on the incoming tide, it's virtually impossible to get stranded. If you paddle on the outgoing tide, if you slow down, you might not make it and be stuck for 6 hours. You know, make sure you bring some extra food and some extra clothing and lights and all the other 10 essentials.
Mosquito repellent. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So, but yeah, go on the incoming tides. It's almost always a good idea in any tidal area. If you get into river mouths, yeah, don't even go near them on an outgoing tide. It's just not worth it. It's unless you want to go out in the worst of conditions, and go for it, but generally just don't. So yeah, here we have the St. Helens. So let's say we want to paddle at Sophie Island. We want to know, we're going to do that this weekend because I'm one of those people who needs to work. So click the little calendar. Let's say Saturday. And we're going into May. Sunday. You have a few options here. Just go for plot daily. And then one thing easy, don't look at this little sidebar, because that just, no matter what time you select, this keeps showing today's tide, and it's easy to trip yourself up then. So what time would we want to paddle? 12 a.m. till 3 a.m. till 5:10. That's a little bit too early for me. I'd rather not go paddle there on the outgoing tide when it's dropping. So it looks like 1:15 p.m. till about 5:49 till about 6 o'clock would be a good time. You can go a little bit later still. It's not that flat. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple. So in chat, Malton brought up the NOAA Columbia River Estuary Operational Forecast System, or CREOFS, which is a lovely little thing if you like graphs. And let's just go for the middle. And we were talking about Scamakua earlier, so let's bring that up. And we have winds and wind forecasts for a few days. It looks like it's coming from the west. Wind speeds up to 10. Looks like it might go up a little further.
Jasper, is there any way you could make these bigger? It is minuscule on my screen.
Yeah. Not really. You can, I mean, essentially what I can try is open image and new tab. Oh, that's kind of annoying because it doesn't really make it bigger. So wait, maybe I can.
I was thinking if you could make your browser.
There we go.
There we go. Oh my goodness. It's like I just had glasses.
Do that here actually.
Yeah, nice.
There we go. It's better. I also I make the screen bigger and I start talking louder for some reason.
Hey, whatever we got to do to get the information out. That works.
So yeah, a lot of the same information that we already have in the weather forecasts, tide levels, but in graphs, and you have everything on one page, so that's kind of nice. Current speed, right at that point, it's not very high. It's like up to 1 knot. Current direction does jump around. We have outgoing tides there. And it varies a little bit with the time exchange. Like once you get further up on the Columbia, it never turns around. But it varies with the tidal exchange where that point is. So, you know, just kind of look at the information you have and figure it out. The water temperature. Goodness, mostly seems between 45 and 50 with a drop to almost 40 at some point in time on 4/28 around noon, it looks like. Jeez, that's cold. Should you be wearing immersion wear? Absolutely.
And is that just our winter coat, Jasper, or what would that be?
I don't know. Malton, can you say something about that?
I'd say visit my website, coldwatersafety.org. Learn all about it. Yeah, wetsuits or dry suits. And if it's a wetsuit, it's got to be snug fitting, and it has to be one that is thick enough for the water conditions, for the temperature.
But how will I know whether it's thick enough?
You will swim test your gear. You'll get in the water and you'll see how it works, so that you know that it's suitable for the task.
Yeah, my simple answer to that is usually, if you don't want to volunteer for rescue practice because the water is too cold, then you should probably be wearing more. Yeah. That is because you need to do rescue practice anyway. Try to do one every trip. Why not? And if it's too cold, wear more. That's because it's gonna be too cold once you get in the water too. So that out of the way. Well, so that's pretty much what crayons have. Go out of, what's this one? There is, of course, various, it has a lot of different data points I can go.
And Jasper, this is specific to the Columbia River estuary. Are there other places where you find water temp, like if we wanted to know the Willamette or Tillamook Bay or, I don't know, on Mount Hood?
One, so you can go to, there's various places. NOAA has a system like the Northwest River Data Center or something. I'm not sure what it is called. I don't use that one often. They get their data mostly, the river data mostly from the USGS, who also has their own system. But one of the easiest places that I find is if I go to Oops Kayak and I go to, where is it? There we go. Water levels, flows, temperatures. Then this is the, what is it, WKCC. And I go to Oregon and you see it's previously used. Then we have almost all rivers and several spots on the rivers. And we go, for instance, to Willamette River by Eugene. And we'll see that currently the stage is, or the flow is so many cubic feet per second. So a little about 5,000. Temperatures are mentioned here. I know Oregon City Upper is one I often use, but that just guesses the stage height. By itself, that doesn't give you a heck of a lot of information. You kind of have to see that compared to conditions you have previously observed. So, you know, if you're going to the Narrows, I will say between 58 and so above 58, it can start getting fun or sporty. The falls is kind of similar. The nice thing about the falls is that they're fairly approachable. You can paddle to them and you can see it. So it's a easy paddle to do. You go look at them, and from there you decide whether you want to go play in the currents or not. If you go past that line, don't post pictures on the Oops Facebook page, because it's apparently not legal. Doesn't say that nobody does it, but yeah. So, but I've been called out for that. So that's. So yeah, this nice little resource. Let me put that in the chat. Where's the chat? There we go. And here you go. How? A quick little introduction into navigation. It's got to be short and quick because we're getting close to 8. Well, this is my address. How do I know that? Well, we have a street, 17th Avenue, and a house number. The house number kind of represents a location on that street, and every street has one. So it's sort of a grid. Most of the cities built in a grid pattern. Things can also not really built in a grid, but you'll still have house numbers on that street, which still indicates a certain location on that street. Rivers are essentially exactly the same. What we have in, actually, let me just. On rivers, and it's kind of the same as on a highway, we have the mileposts. On rivers, we have river miles, and that's kind of, you have your river, which is a line, and you have your river miles that are location on that mile. So we can say, let's see, if we're talking about the Cape Horn area, we can say that's all between river mile 130 and 135. Further, on top of that, we have what we call aids to navigation. And that is, in this case, all these little dots here that have lights on it. And we have general, like, how do you call it again? What's the English word? Landmarks, things you can see. You see islands. Islands can be a little bit tricky in the sense that that their edges move by higher or lower waters. I'd be a little bit careful with that. Cape Horn the cape is very visible. We have these day markers, but our poles in the water, those are not natural, of course. Foca Rock is a very visible rock. There's no mistaking where it is. So those are all kind of things. And most of the time on the river, we don't have to get very technical in our navigation. You know, we start paddling from the boat ramp here. We get on the water, have a good look around, like what landmarks do I have to know where I am? And you'll see there's actually some structure here that's not on the chart. And you start paddling and you notice there's a day marker. We get to day markers and what they are later. And we can follow all those as we go along and as we come back. So you can just make a mental picture. You can print out a chart, keep this on thingy, and it's not complicated. You don't do a lot of math. I seldomly take bearings. I will look at ranges if I'm crossing, just see how much drift I have, but we'll talk about it later.
Jasper, can you zoom in on here and show where you're seeing the river miles? Because it's so tiny.
Okay.
I want to make sure people see those things.
Let's see how far. Oh, and I'm out of zooming range here. So this pink red line here is a river mile marking on the chart. They don't exist in real life. There's no actual pole staying. What we do have are the aids to navigation, which are just marked with a number. So this one is marked 66. And then we have one here is 67. There's 68. And they go, as we go up, they just go up in numbering, but they don't represent a specific distance. Mm-hmm. So they're not regular, but they are sequential. We'll get back into that a little bit in a second. So where can you get these charts? Well, obviously, NOAA has them. You can also buy them printed out. What? Why? If I want, well, nowadays I mostly use a GIS system to print out my charts. But one thing that I kind of want to point out, if I go to paper charts, and I'll zoom in here, there we can see Oregon. I can start seeing, oh, that is not what I did. And now we have to start all over again. I misclicked. Let's. Oh, this is an area most of us will be familiar with. And now if we click on that, we have a couple of options. If you click on PDF, you get this ginormous PDF that I don't have printers for, but you could. You can buy them, you can view them. But if you print on BC, they have a little thing called a booklet chart, which you can print out on any normal printer and just scroll down, and they kind of just are cut up for you in convenient little pages. So I like sometimes using those if I don't feel like making custom charts myself. Once again, running out of, yeah.
Jasper, this is Peter, and just for the group, in addition to those resources, there's online resources, separate ones that I like. Caltopo is a typical one.
Yep.
Where you can then customize it and get it much bigger than the NOAA booklet charts, which to me are pretty tiny. I'd have to blow those up to make them worthwhile. So there are some other ones, and there are instructions for that, for actually both the booklet charts and Caltopa on our OOPS website. In addition, a lot of these, particularly the ones on, say, the Willamette, Chris is on the call, and Dana did extensive amount of work writing up trips. And for each of those trips that were written up, there are ready-made PDFs that I prepared to match up with each of those trips. They're all available. Chris sent up a link earlier in today's presentation for how to access that. And you can go through and see, for example, if you're going to go circumnavigate Reed Island, what's the reference you need to for height, so that the channel it's not going to be, you're not going to, ground out. You can flow through the channel, Bachelor Channel.
Yeah.
So that's just a plug for what Chris and Dana did.
Jasper, yeah, it looks like Chris put it in the chat. Put that link.
Jasper, do you know if there are resources for the Columbia River in Canada?
Are there resources? Yes. The Canadian counterpart of the NOAA has a lot of information. They do not have a Freedom of Information Act the way we have it, where they are required to publish it to the people. So you'll have to pay for it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Which is kind of the situation in most of the world. Like in the Netherlands, you have to buy charts. So that's it. Other little, I have no, how do you call it? There's the Yachtsman Oregon chart book. It's essentially tabloid sized, just the NOAA charts printed out. It's I had it for years. I liked it because I could just keep it in the car and put it in a map. How do you call it? Chart case to keep it dry and grab it and go paddling. So it was a nice and easy resource to have for a spontaneous paddle without having to prepare charts beforehand. So I liked having it, but I haven't used it in forever, and mine fell apart from old age anyway. But for $25, it's a pretty decent resource to have. Oh, great. This went all the way. Reloading this. Okay, a couple of other things. Scalar distance line, I don't think that anybody has any questions about that. Compass rose, gonna skip that because we're not gonna talk about compass work today anyway. Depth contours, gonna skip over that today. I want to talk a little bit about H2 navigation. I mentioned day markers before. Well, here's one. It obviously is numbered. If you look on your chart, and let's zoom in on one. So here's a day marker. We can tell it's a day marker and not a buoy by the fact that it's a solid dot. And a day marker is a pole in the water or on the land with a marker on it. It has a flashing red light that flashes for 4 seconds. It's 18 feet high.
You can see it for 4 miles.
Yeah, you can see it for 4 miles, and it's marked number 66. And like you see in that picture, obviously that's not 66, but they're clearly marked. You can't really miss it. Binocular can be helpful sometimes if you are far away from them. Green, oh yeah, just to help you, the red ones are usually triangular and have an even number. And most of the time, but not always, but on the Columbia and Willamette, it is generally the case. They will be on your right hand side if you're going inland, which you remember by red right return. The green ones will be square, have an odd number, and will be on your port or left side when you're returning, when you're going inland. Red buoy, once again, it sort of has that triangular shape, still an even number. On the charts, you will, there must be this one right by. You will notice here's a red buoy, no light, number 68. You notice that the dot is not filled in, it's open. That's kind of how you can recognize that it's a buoy and not a day marker. The fact that it's in the water helps that too, but yeah, the official marking is that it's an open dot. And they're called a nun because the triangle shape reminds of a nun hat, I think, I don't know. Green buoy, once again, is more squarish, has an odd number. And one of the issues with a buoy, of course, is they're anchored, so they can shift. So with a day marker, you know where it is. Buoys can sometimes shift or disappear. It's rare that they shift enough for us to really care, but it does happen. Chart symbols, kind of already went over most of that. This publication by the NOAA called Chart Number 1 that has all that in more detail than you'd ever want to know. If you want to nerd out, download it and read it. Look things up on charts. Skip this for now because I haven't even talked about what LOP is. I kind of took parts of my normal navigation spiel, but had to condense it a lot. So, handrailing. When we're talking about navigation on a river, most of the time we're handrailing. We're following the shore. It's easy. You can't really get lost there. You cross over, you follow the other shore. I mean, I'm not gonna go paddle in the middle of the channel if I don't absolutely have to for some reason. It's no fun, it's a higher risk, and it's not where the good stuff is to see, so why would you? So you're already having one line of precision. You know you're on that shore. Can't really go wrong there, and that combined with the other aids of navigation. Okay. The only math we will do in this navigation. Distance is speed times time. Time is distance times speed. Speed is distance by time. Distance divided by time. Why would you use this? Anybody have an idea? And honestly, I don't use it that often. What I mostly keep in mind is if I go 2 hours upstream and I haven't found my return spot yet after 2 hours going downstream, I know I likely overshot it. That's, but you can be more precise in it. And that's kind of like, you know, you can calculate, if you know the distance you have paddled in a certain spot, you can calculate your speed. You can use that knowledge to calculate your distance. It's not the most precise, but it's good to have multiple points of data to verify your navigation. But honestly, for a day paddle on the river, it's not really that hard. Ranges, I'm gonna skip over that a little bit for now. Dealing with tides and tidal currents. I'm gonna skip all this. I do kind of want to talk about what a range is, because it's kind of the two most useful aspects when, say, crossing the river, the Columbia, going to another place, is there are two tactics. You can follow a range, and it just means looking at 2 points on shore and keeping those in line. Because if you're drifting off, you get to see this angle, you know, and vice versa. It's kind of hard to, I don't think I can explain it on a Zoom meeting, but look up ranges, and they help you to make a straight crossing. The other crossing strategy is just overshoot your crossing by a generous mounting, cross, so you know you're above the point where you want to go. Once again, I wouldn't really stress about too much about it. And then the third thing when crossing the river, don't be afraid to paddle a mile extra somewhere to get to a place where you have a good view in both directions, because the most dangerous thing on the Columbia is going to be other ships. So if you can see further away, you're making things a lot safer for yourself. And I think and that's all I got for today. And I only went 3 minutes over.
3 minutes. Thanks, Jasper. There's a lot of information here clearly that we didn't even get to. So maybe there'll be future times where we dig into more specifics, or if folks come out and do some classes with you, they'll learn more things, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to stop the recording in case there are questions people don't want to ask while it's being recorded. So give me 1 second here.